The knock on the farm gate. The sky was dark and wide, holding two silent moons that watched from above. The wind moved slowly over the dry red soil, carrying dust and the smell of something old, like a memory that refused to fade. On this quiet, burned world, far from the stars of the central systems, a man named Calen walked alone. His boots were torn. His jacket was burned in 3 places. His face was rough and tired, his eyes sunken deep from sleep he hadn't had in days. He had once been a soldier, a man who followed orders, wore medals, and believed in the good side of war. But now, he was just a drifter moving from planet to planet looking for something, anything that would give him purpose again. He hadn't eaten in almost 2 days. He hadn't spoken to anyone in longer. But when he saw the lights blinking in the distance, a small farm it looked like, he pushed his body forward, using the last of his strength. The farm looked like it had been built long ago. The fence was made of alien metal, but it was rusted and bent in places. Crops grew tall and strange, glowing faint green and blue in the night. Some moved slightly, as if breathing. Calen stood outside the gate, unsure. But hunger and hope pushed him. He knocked. The gate didn't open right away. He waited. His hand fell back to his side. He was ready to walk away when the door creaked. Then he saw her. She was tall, taller than him, and alien in a way that was both strong and soft. Her skin shimmered like silver dust. Her arms looked like they had lifted heavy things for many years. But her voice, when she spoke, it was quiet, almost afraid. Her eyes glowed in the moonlight. Calen tried to speak first, but she raised her hand and studied his face. Long silence. Then she said something that made him freeze. "If you're here to work." "I don't need a worker. I need a father," he blinked. I don't understand," he said. Behind her, 3 small faces peeked out. Children, alien but with something almost human in their eyes. One looked no older than 5. Another stood with arms crossed, protective. The third clung to the tall woman's robe. "I only have my hands," Calen said. "I was a soldier. Now, I just need food, shelter. I can help on the farm." But the woman didn't smile. She didn't nod. She only looked at him and said again, "I don't need a worker." Calen turned to leave, but then, just before he took a step, she added, "One night, stay in the shed. If the children don't cry, we talk again in the morning." Calen was too tired to argue. He nodded. "Thank you," he said. She didn't reply. She pointed to a small metal building near the edge of the crops. The door opened with a quiet hiss. He stepped inside. It smelled of old oil and dust, but it was warm. There was a bed, a blanket, a sink. He fell asleep before he could ask himself what kind of place this was. The next morning, light broke through a small window. He heard laughter, soft, cautious laughter. Calen rose and stepped outside. The alien woman, Mari, as he would later learn, was pouring something thick and blue into bowls. The children were sitting in a circle. One of them looked at him and whispered something, another giggled. Mari looked up at Calen. Her face was unreadable. "You can fix fences?" she asked. "I can learn." "You can cook?" "I can try." She studied him again, then pointed to the tools near the shed. "We start at Sunpeak," Calen blinked. "So I can stay?" She nodded. "One more day. If the children still don't cry." He looked at the kids. They weren't smiling, but they weren't afraid anymore. He picked up the tool bag, confused, curious, and strangely hopeful. He still didn't understand what she meant. Why did she say she needed a father, not a worker? And why? Did he feel like he wanted to stay and find out? As the second moon faded from the sky, Calen stepped into the fields of glowing crops, not knowing this farm would soon become the center of something much, much bigger than he ever expected. The farm with no laughter. The sun on this planet did not rise suddenly. It crawled across the sky in shades of red and gold, like a flame moving slow and heavy across a dying world. Calen stood near the edge of the strange orchard, gripping a bent tool that looked half like a wrench and half like a weapon. He had spent the morning silently repairing parts of the broken fence under Mari's quiet eyes, learning to twist wires that hummed with alien energy and hammer posts made of glass-like stone. The land around him whispered with small sounds, wind in the blue-leafed trees, the slow buzz of hidden insects, and the soft crackling of glowing roots shifting under the soil. Yet one thing was missing. There was no laughter, no singing, no voices of children playing. The silence of the farm was heavy, and Calen felt it pressing on his chest like a forgotten grief. He watched the children from a distance. Luma, the youngest, carried a small glowing ball everywhere, never letting it go. She would often stop and look at Calen, as if trying to remember something she couldn't name. Tor, the middle child, was quiet but curious, occasionally sneaking behind Calen to mimic his movements. Calen, the oldest, had eyes like frozen fire, sharp, angry, protective. He didn't speak to Calen at all. Instead, he watched every step the human made like a hawk ready to strike. It was clear he saw Calen not as a guest or helper, but as a threat. To him, Calen wasn't a man offering help. He was someone trying to fill a place that had been stolen. Later that day, Mari handed Calen a container of thick blue fluid that smelled oddly like mint and metal. "Drink," she said. "It helps the body adjust to our air." Her voice was always calm, always quiet, but Calen could sense the storm buried inside. Her eyes carried weight, loss, caution, and maybe something else too. Something deeper. She didn't ask him about his past, but he knew she guessed it. She didn't mention the war, but the scars on his arms and the way he flinched at loud noises probably told her everything. Still, she let him work. And he did. Grateful for the silence and shelter. At night, Calen sat alone outside the shed, staring at the stars. But the peace didn't last. Strange lights flickered in the sky far away, ships maybe moving too fast, then vanishing like ghosts. He heard footsteps outside once, long after everyone had gone to sleep. Not Mari, not the kids. He stayed awake until morning, gripping a piece of metal like a blade. The following day, he entered the old tool barn looking for a power cell and stumbled across something unexpected. An old human photograph stuck to the inside wall, yellowed and cracked. In it stood Mari, younger, softer, her silver hair shorter, and beside her was a human man in uniform. Calen's breath caught. The man was smiling. One arm around Mari's shoulder, the other holding a small infant with glowing eyes. Calen stepped back, the memory of the war flickering behind his eyes. Could this be her husband? A human who stayed behind? Who was he? A deserter? A diplomat? A soldier like him? His mind flooded with questions, but when he turned to ask Mari, he found her already standing behind him, silent as stone. She didn't look angry. She didn't look sad. She simply nodded and took the photo gently from his hand. "Yes," she said. That was him. Calen waited for more, but Mari simply turned and walked away. That night, Calen couldn't sleep. His mind was full of things he didn't understand. Who had that man been? Why did Mari bring Calen here? Was he just a tool or something more? Why did her words still echo in his head? "I need a father, not a worker." The next morning, Calen saw something new. Luma had drawn a picture on the dirt outside the shed. 4 stick figures, Mari, the 3 kids, and one human with brown hair and sad eyes. She looked up at him and asked softly, "Are you going to leave too?" Calen didn't know what to say, because deep inside something had started to change. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about where to go next. He was thinking about staying. But he also knew the universe didn't leave things in peace for long. And far above, on a dark orbiting ship, someone had already locked on to the farm's location. A father's uniform days passed slowly on the alien farm, yet something inside Calen moved faster than he could understand. Each sunrise felt heavier, not because of the work, but because every day this place revealed another small piece of truth he did not expect to find. He had arrived here only to look for food and shelter, a place to survive without being hunted by his own memories. But now this farm was not only giving him shelter, it was forcing him to face parts of his past he had locked away forever. Mari watched him every day with eyes that were quiet but sharp, like she could see every scar behind his silence. The children watched him too, all 3 in different ways. Tor seemed to shadow him like a student studying a teacher. Luma clung to him like she had already accepted him without thinking. But Calen refused him completely, always standing at a distance, as if daring Calen to try to replace the ghost they still called father. The farm, which looked peaceful from outside, was not actually peaceful at all. There was so much pain here buried under the soil, under the dust. Inside every corner where voices used to laugh but now only silence lived. One afternoon, while Mari was preparing nutrient feed and the children were stacking storage cubes, Calen entered an old storage room beside the barn to look for new sealant. The room smelled like dust mixed with frozen ozone, like the air inside came from another world entirely. As he moved the metal crates aside, he saw something inside a glass box mounted to the wall. He stopped breathing for a moment. It was a uniform, old human military armor, clean, protected, and folded perfectly like it had just been placed yesterday. And beside it, a set of medals, 3 patches, and a name tag. The uniform belonged to a decorated human soldier, and the name on the tag was familiar in a way that shook something deep inside his bones. Mari appeared behind him like a shadow moving through time, her voice steady and almost cold as she said, "He was human. He came here to make peace, not war." Calen's body turned slowly toward her as she continued walking toward the uniform, her hand resting on the glass as if she could still feel his heart beat through it. "He was my husband," she said softly, "and he was the father of my children." The weight of those words crushed every breath inside Calen, because this was no ordinary soldier. He had heard the name before. Back in the war, back during debriefings that were whispered behind locked doors. This man had vanished in a classified mission, and Calen realized he might have been deployed in the same sector when that mission went dark. Mari did not cry when she spoke about him. She had passed the stage of crying long ago. She now lived only in the stage where silence becomes armor. She told Calen he came here to negotiate a peace agreement between humans and her species. But when war erupted, the galaxy erased his existence to avoid responsibility for the betrayal that followed. The world believed him dead, but Mari never accepted that. She waited for years, sent signals, built fences, protected their children alone. And Calen slowly learned that this farm was not isolated because they wanted distance. It was isolated because the galaxy wanted them forgotten. The children had power locked inside their DNA from both species. They were valuable, dangerous to the wrong hands. And that was exactly why someone was watching them. Because that night, while everyone slept, Calen stood outside staring at the sky again, just like he did every single night since arriving. But this time he wasn't only watching the stars. He was watching a ship hovering far beyond the clouds, silent and dark, blinking in short-coded flashes. Not a merchant ship, not a traveler. It was military pattern, tracking, measuring, waiting. He kept his eyes locked on the ship until the blinking finally stopped and the night went dark again. When he returned to the shed before dawn, Kane was standing at the door holding something tightly with both hands. The alien boy's eyes were full of fury, fear, and a pain too old for his age. Kane threw something at Calen. It landed on the ground between them, a sealed box bearing the exact same human insignia as the uniform he saw earlier. Calen slowly opened it, and inside was a folded message, old but preserved, written in human language, addressed to whoever came after. Kane said with a broken voice, "If you really want to stay here, then prove you are not like the others who left." Then Kane walked away before Calen could answer. Inside the box, beneath the message, was a patch identical to the one Calen used to wear in his own military unit. This farm was not random fate. He wasn't here by luck. He was part of something long before he ever knocked on Mari's gate. He just never knew it. And the galaxy, far above this quiet, broken world, was already preparing for the day these secrets would rise again. The attack in the orchard. The air was thick with heat as Calen moved through the orchard, sweat trickling down his neck while the 2 suns hovered high above the strange violet trees. The orchard was unlike anything he had seen on Earth. Each tree pulsed softly with a dull glow, and the fruits that hung from them were translucent, heavy with sweet energy-rich fluid that Mari said could keep a full-grown being alive for days. Calen worked with Tor and Kane that morning, harvesting and loading the fruits into weightless crates, his hands moving faster now, more familiar with the alien tools, more certain with every swing and lift. Yet while his hands worked, his mind was somewhere else, still trying to understand the strange letter he had found in the sealed box, still questioning the military ship he had seen blinking like an unblinking eye above them 2 nights ago. He didn't mention it to Mari or the children, not yet, but the feeling that something terrible was coming had not left him since. Kane said nothing to Calen that day, but the boy no longer glared with the same rage. He still didn't trust Calen, but the hatred had softened, replaced by a quiet wariness. Tor, on the other hand, laughed once when Calen tripped over a root and dropped 2 glowing fruits, and Luma clapped from a distance, calling out in a soft, giggly voice, "Farmer Calen, For a moment there was lightness and almost forgotten kind of warmth. Calen smiled without realizing it. These small moments, these fragile seconds of peace felt like treasure in a world that had long lost its innocence. But peace, he had learned the hard way, never lasted when you needed it most. It began with a sound too low to be natural, a deep humming that rolled through the air like thunder hiding behind glass. Calen froze. The children froze. Even the trees seemed to respond, their glowing leaves folding inward like frightened eyes. Calen raised his head and saw the source above the ridge, a long, narrow ship descending with the grace of a hawk about to strike. It bore no insignia, no identification, but Calen had seen enough in his soldier years to recognize the shape and design. It was a smuggler craft, customized for speed and combat. And it wasn't just passing by. It was slowing down, preparing to land. Mari's voice came over the comm in Calen's ear, sharp and short. "Get the children. Get to the lower shelter now." Calen didn't argue. He grabbed Tor by the arm, shouted for Kane and Luma, and began running toward the central house. But the ship was faster. It dropped from the sky, blocking the path with a wave of wind and force. The ramp lowered and figures in black emerged. Humanoid, armored, weapons drawn. They moved like trained hunters surrounding the orchard with calculated precision. One shouted, "Stand down. Give us the hybrids and we leave the rest." Calen placed himself between the children and the attackers, his voice low but steady. "You're not taking anyone," the smugglers laughed. "You, one man with no weapon?" But Calen had lived through too many battles to be afraid of words. With no time to plan, he grabbed a harvesting tool, activated the plasma edge and stood ready. The first attacker rushed forward, and Calen moved like lightning, sweeping the man's legs out and driving the blunt edge into his chest. Sparks flew. The man dropped. Kane, who had hidden Luma behind a rock, stared in shock. Tor screamed. The orchard turned into a battleground. Mari arrived seconds later, firing an energy pulse from an old but powerful rifle. Her precision was surgical, 2 shots, 2 smugglers down. But one of them managed to break through the line and ran toward Luma. Calen threw his body in front of the child and took the hit in his side. Pain exploded through him, but he didn't stop. He grabbed the attacker's arm, twisted, disarmed him, and smashed the helmet with the butt of his tool. Everything slowed. The smugglers, seeing resistance, retreated fast, knowing reinforcements were coming. They vanished into the sky as quickly as they came, but they left behind chaos and blood. Calen collapsed near the barn, gasping, the wound on his side burning with white fire. Mary rushed to him, her hands glowing as she pressed an alien healing patch into his skin. "Don't move," she ordered. Kane stood nearby, holding Luma, his face pale. He looked at Calen, this human he hated, this stranger who had just bled to protect them. And something inside him cracked. "You're not like the others," Kane whispered. Calen smiled weakly. "Took you long enough to see that." Later, while Calen rested in the shed, Mari sat beside him. For the first time, she spoke of the truth she had never shared. "They came before," she said. "Not the same men, but the same kind. Always searching. Because the soil on this farm carries more than life. It carries something your people once left behind. And the children, they carry his legacy. But now, I think they carry yours too." Calen looked at her, eyes heavy, voice soft. "I'm not him. I never will be." "You don't have to be," Mari said. "You just have to stay." Outside, the orchard trees glowed softly once again. But high above, unseen to all of them, the military ship had returned, this time closer, watching every movement. And the signal it just sent into the stars had finally reached the Galactic Council. Secrets of the burned sky. The morning after the orchard attack came with a stillness too perfect to trust. The wind had stopped. The trees stood still. Even the birds, those strange, feathery creatures with metal-like wings that usually circled above the farm, were nowhere in sight. It was the kind of silence that carried weight. Like the planet itself was holding its breath. Calen stood at the edge of the field with a wrapped bandage on his side, his body aching but his mind sharper than ever. He was no longer just a visitor here. Something had changed during the fight. Something deeper than pain, deeper than duty. He looked at the 3 children playing near the water unit. Kane now keeping watch with eyes sharper than before. Tor trying to balance glowing rocks on his head to make Luma laugh. For the first time, the children didn't just tolerate him. They looked at him like he was a part of them. like he belonged here, but belonging came with a price. Mari stood beside him, silent for a long while. Then she spoke in a voice that carried sorrow like a storm cloud carries lightning. "They'll come again," she said. "The smugglers were just the first. I can feel it. I always knew this farm was a temporary home, not a permanent one. It's only a matter of time before the council finds us. Or worse, those who wear their uniforms but serve their own greed." Calen didn't answer right away. He knew what she was saying was true. He had seen the blinking ship at night. He had heard the silence of deep orbit. And now for the past 2 nights, the comm channel on his old wrist device had been intercepting faint signals. Military grade, coded, encrypted, bouncing off old satellite stations still alive above this forgotten planet. They were scanning, watching, calculating. Someone knew the children were here. Someone important. That evening, Calen returned to the storage unit where the old uniform was kept. The glass panel was still covered in dust and the metals shimmered faintly under the light. He stared at the nameplate again. The same last name as one mentioned in his debriefings years ago, a peace envoy from Earth who had vanished during a top-secret diplomatic mission to alien territories. That envoy had been written off as missing in action, but whispered rumors among the ranks said he was sacrificed, his mission erased to protect a greater lie. And now, standing here, Calen knew for sure. Mari's late husband had been that envoy. A man from Earth, married to a woman of another species, father to hybrid children who now carried something far more dangerous than anyone imagined. Calen opened the message again, the one Kane had given him, the one from the sealed box. It wasn't just a letter. It was a warning. The former envoy had left behind coordinates, a code, and a truth hidden within a satellite cache orbiting this very planet. It held something that could expose the Council. A memory log, a transmission file. Something that proved Earth had betrayed its own man and lied about the peace agreement to fuel war instead. And the children, especially Luma, were bio-keyed to unlock that cache. That's why the smugglers had come. That's why more would come. And that's why this family was in danger. Because truth was the one weapon the galaxy feared most. That night, a ship landed in the old crop field, but it wasn't like the smuggler crafts. This one was sleek, black and polished, bearing the markings of the Galactic Authority. Calen stepped forward before Mari could move, placing his body between the ship and the farmhouse. Soldiers poured out, not ragged thugs, but disciplined, faceless enforcers in chrome armor moving like machines. One of them scanned the property with a glowing orb. The signal beeped. The orb blinked red, and then a female officer stepped forward, removing her helmet to reveal calm, cold eyes. "Calen Rook," she said in a neutral voice. "We have authorization to escort the hybrid children for evaluation. They will not be harmed. They are property of the Peace Genome Treaty. You have no legal authority to obstruct our mission." Calen didn't blink. "You want the kids? Go through me." The woman didn't flinch. "We have clearance to remove threats." Mari stepped beside him. "So do I." There was a standoff. Silence stretched. Then, as if from the stars themselves, an old satellite suddenly activated in orbit, triggered by the silent data stream Calen had just uploaded with the children's help. The ground hummed. The sky shimmered. And a voice, broken, static-filled human, echoed through every device on the ship and farm. "This is Envoy Elias Rook. If you're hearing this, the Council has erased me. The treaty was never honored. My wife, my children, they are living proof of betrayal. Protect them. Expose the truth." Gasps echoed from the soldiers. Some of them lowered their weapons. The officer's calm face broke for the first time, replaced by uncertainty and fear. Calen turned to Mari and whispered, "It worked. He left a path. We just have to follow it." And far above, in the command chambers of the Galactic Council, an emergency alert lit up on every screen. The truth was no longer buried, and the man they had erased from history had just spoken again. Through his blood, through his children, and through the only human left who had the courage to stand beside them. The choice, the sky had changed color. It was no longer just violet or gold, but streaked with veins of blue and crimson, like the planet itself was bleeding truth into the atmosphere. Ever since the old satellite activated and the forgotten voice of Elias Rook echoed across the system, nothing had been the same. News of the message spread like fire through the underground networks. Pirates, rebels, politicians, even former soldiers. Everyone was talking about the human envoy who had never died, only been silenced. Mari's children were no longer just children. They were living keys to a truth the galaxy had buried, and now everyone wanted them. The Council could not ignore them anymore, but neither could it allow them to be heard. Calen knew what was coming. Not hours or days from now, but soon. Very soon. Inside the farmhouse, Mari was silent. She stood near the window, staring at the distant clouds that hid ships that might be hers or might be their enemies. Calen stood across from her, tightening a strap across his shoulder, adjusting the weight of the plasma rifle he had not touched since the war ended. His side still ached from the injury, but the pain now was background noise to something larger. The children were in the underground root cellar, protected by a security lock Mari had once said would only be used in the last moment. That moment, it seemed, had arrived. Kane, now alert and strong, kept watch. Tor worked silently to gather food. Luma, too young to understand the weight of what was happening, clutched a data crystal in her hand, a crystal encoded with her father's final message and the location of a second satellite cache, somewhere deep in the wastes of Tranor. That location, if reached, would reveal every meeting, every recording, every lie the Council had used to fuel war between Earth and the outer colonies. It would shatter empires. Mari turned from the window, her voice low but firm. If we run, they will chase us. If we stay, they will crush us. Either way, the children will never be free until this truth is no longer a secret. Calen looked at her, eyes tired but steady. Then we don't run, he said. And we don't hide. We reveal it all. On our terms. In front of the whole galaxy. She studied him quietly for a long moment, then nodded. That evening, the farm became a command post. Calen sent out a ghost signal to a contact he hadn't spoken to in years. A smuggler turned rebel named Talvex, a man who owed Calen his life. Mari rerouted the satellite's backup stream into a secure channel, while Kane transmitted false coordinates to confuse any incoming threats. For a few hours, they had control. But just as night fell, the first wave arrived, not smugglers, not Council soldiers, but something worse. Private enforcers, mercenaries, hired by factions who wanted the truth, kept silent, even if it meant burning an entire family into the ground. They landed without warning. 3 attack cruisers, armed, ready, and cold. Calen stood at the gate, the children hidden behind a secure wall of stone and tech. One of the mercenaries stepped forward, tall and faceless in chrome-black armor, a voice distorted through a mask. Give us the girl. Give us the data. You can live. Calen did not move. She's not just a girl, he said. She's her father's voice. And his voice was truth. The mercenary cocked his weapon. Truth dies every day. But not today, Calen replied, and then he stepped forward alone, outnumbered, wounded, and without backup. But behind him, one by one, lights blinked on in the sky. Ships arriving. Not Council, not enforcers, but rebels, old soldiers. Smugglers who had once believed the envoy was a traitor, now realizing he had been a victim. They came because they remembered the cost of silence. They came because one man, Calen, had stood between power and innocence. Mari emerged too, her rifle glowing, her eyes shining like fire in the wind. And the children appeared behind her, not hiding, not running, standing strong. The leader of the mercenaries paused, calculated, and for the first time stepped back. It wasn't a battle. It was a choice, and they lost. The enforcers left. The skies cleared. The signal reached the far ends of the galaxy. Father of the future, the storm never came. Not the way Calen expected. No missiles, no blood, no screaming through smoke and metal. Instead, silence became their victory. When the mercenaries stepped back and the sky cleared, it wasn't because they were weak, it was because the truth finally had a voice louder than any gun. The satellite, long forgotten and buried under government lies, had broadcast Elias Rook's final transmission not just once, but across a repeating signal loop. Every colony, every station, every planet with a listening ear had heard the voice of a man erased from history. And in that voice, the galaxy heard more than data or blame. It heard sorrow. It heard confession. It heard a father begging the universe to protect the last proof of peace he left behind, his children. And the man who now stood at the center of it all wasn't him. It was Calen. They didn't celebrate. No one threw their arms in the air or danced under the twin moons. There was no moment of roaring triumph. There was only breath. Deep, quiet, relieved breath, as Calen walked slowly through the orchard that had once bled and now glowed in soft peace. Luma ran to him, clutching the empty crystal like it still carried her father's voice. And she held Calen's hand with that same quiet certainty she had shown the first day. Tor followed her, asking if the soldiers would come back. Calen, silent but watchful, didn't speak. But for the first time when Calen looked at him, the boy didn't turn away. Mari stood at the top of the hill, wind pressing her silver hair across her face. Calen walked up to her slowly, his boots dragging slightly from exhaustion but his back straight. She didn't speak right away. She only looked at the horizon where the stars began to blink back into the sky, one by one. Then in a voice heavy with something deeper than hope, she said, "You could leave now. You've done more than anyone asked. The path is open. You're not bound here." Calen didn't answer quickly. He looked at the sky, too. He had thought about that, leaving, disappearing into the stars like so many men did after war. But something inside him had shifted, and this time, it wasn't because of orders or mission. It was because for the first time in years he had something to lose. And something to protect. He turned to her, his voice low but clear. "You once said you didn't need a worker. You needed a father." She nodded slowly, her eyes not leaving his. "I did, and now?" he asked. She didn't blink. "Now I need someone who doesn't run when the sky darkens." He took a long breath, then knelt slowly, letting Luma climb onto his knee. "Then I guess I'm staying." The days that followed were quiet but not empty. Ships came and went. Journalists tried to land and were denied. Messages from rebel leaders arrived asking for guidance. Even whispers of a new peace movement began circling through the systems, using the story of Elias and Mari and the children as a symbol of what war had stolen, and what it could no longer bury. But Calen didn't care about politics. He spent his mornings fixing the fences he once broke. He learned how to harvest the fruit without bruising it. He built a new classroom under the large tree near the water unit. Tor would teach math, Calen would teach defense, and Luma, the youngest, insisted on teaching secrets, which meant anything she felt the others forgot. One afternoon, while repairing the solar conduits, Calen found a folded piece of cloth under one of the panels. It was the old uniform, the human armor of Elias Rook, cleaned, folded, preserved. But now beside it, there was something new, a cloak. Alien design, woven with silver thread, and pinned together with the seal of the farm made by Calen himself. Mari stepped beside him. "You're both of them now," she said quietly. "Human and home." Calen didn't say anything. He placed the cloak over the armor, then smiled. That night Luma asked him before bed, "Are you really my father now?" He paused, sat beside her and looked at her tiny face. "What do you think?" She shrugged. "You snore like one." They both laughed, and Calen realized that for the first time since the war ended, he wasn't just alive, he was living. And far above, in the Galactic Hall, a statue was erected, not of Elias Rook alone, but of a human and alien standing side by side. The inscription read, "They tried to erase peace, but peace came back as a father." And under the twin moons of the quiet world they now called home, Calen watched the children play, held Mari's hand, and knew this truth in his bones. He wasn't just a guest anymore, he was their future, and this time, he wasn't leaving.